Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes on Facebook Live. No, on YouTube Live. I'm right that time.
How many times have we done YouTube Live and you're still saying Facebook?
I was actually thinking of something else, and that's why my brain went. Because I was thinking about the dates. There is something called Adam. Adam's back with us. How about that, Mr. Adam Kleininger? Today is 4/25/24, and it's the same thing backwards as it is forward. And that's going to be the same until the 29th, when you can do 4/29/24, 4/2/9/24, backwards and forwards.
Can't you do that with any 20th now?
No. Well, I don't know.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, is it
Yes.
all of the 20s?
Yes.
Okay, it's been all of the 20s, so we're in the middle of all of them. I guess I just figured this out with Victoria the other day. That's why it's anyway. Yes, this is the month in review, April month in review. I am your host, Chris Gazdig. We do this on Thursday nights. It's a great way to interact with us. We fire up about 6:15. This is before you hear the show on Spotify and Apple and all the places you get your podcasts. So we do have Adam Kleininger back with us, man. I missed you on the show for a couple months rather. You had medical stuff you're dealing with, right? You got all better, you healed up, you're well, and everything's good, right?
Yep, I'm good.
So you're back in the saddle.
Yep, back in the saddle again.
Welcome back. Yeah, I love that song. And Neil comes out of the curtains on Thursdays to hang out with us for the month in review on all the shows that we did in that month. And so we have had an interesting mix of shows where we talked about the male angle of sexual abuse and domestic violence, and then we redid the content that we do on moral courage that we do like maybe once a year, and then we had a cool show on the language of substance abuse. So we will kick those around and get into what we got into with that month. Pretty fun, pretty cool. I think it's good shows. Particularly the language of substance abuse. I'll be curious what you know about that, Adam, and how you take that. It's just weird. I mean, because most people don't think about like what.
I don't even know what we're referring to. So
right.
I'm curious what the show was about.
Yeah. Now, so Neil, when you're done typing, we'll go ahead and click up. He's doing the interactions, guys. This is a good way to interact with us during the show. We get comments from you and engage with you, and that kind of makes it fun. Yeah.
Ready?
You ready to fire? Go.
You got your timer ready?
I do not, but I will.
Got to keep everything in check.
You know me so well. Ready?
All right, ready?
2, 1.
Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes on 4/25/24, and we are doing the April month in review. But we have a very special and cool, reinvigorated, well and maintained. You're a well-oiled machine now, Mr.
I am.
Adam Kleininger is hanging out with us again. Welcome back.
Oil change and everything. I'm back. Back at it.
So you had some medical stuff that you were dealing with, and all is well, or still on board, or what's going on?
As far as I know, everything's good.
Okay.
Yep.
Glad to hear it, and I'm glad you're back for sure.
Thank you.
Also, Neil comes out of the curtains and joins us for the month in review.
Hello.
How are you doing, sir?
Good. Got family in town. Enjoying some time with my dad, so it's been a good couple of days.
All right. Yeah, it's beautiful. I actually went golfing. That'd be a fun story to tell off the air.
The problem is I told him, like, it's mid-70s to the 80s, and then, of course, North Carolina, you get up and it's 40. Yep. And he's like, I thought about bringing a coat. I'm like, well, that's North Carolina. You get up at 7 and it's 40, and then by lunch you're up to 70.
I only brought shorts with me.
You never know. You never know in this state around Carolinas. So this is where you get insights from a therapist in your car and home, but it's not to deliver therapy services in any way. We have, as you know, switched to YouTube. So your job is to click subscribe. Please tell a friend. There's a little button on there that you click. All that stuff really helps us get found. You'll get notifications when we come online and whatnot. John always really talks about how many stars we're supposed to get, which is 5, not 4. He's very particular about that. Contact it through a therapisteyes.com is the way to email us. We respond with that. This is the human emotional experience, which we do endeavor to figure out together. Neil, you were going to give kind of an update on what we're doing with shows and the schedule and that sort of thing and what happens so people can begin getting more aware of when to see our shows and stuff.
Well, if they come to YouTube, you'll see it live every Thursday because we're live. But if you listen to it on Spotify or YouTube or iTunes, basically we're a little behind on there. So we're doing some catch up. We're doing 2 shows a week, doing the backlog. So if you listen to it on those platforms, you should be getting a lot of downloads. And so in the next few weeks, we'll get everything caught up. We're going to get back to a live on a Thursday, and then like Tuesday, the show is going to be posted as a podcast. So once again, if you really love the show and you want to catch up faster, just go to YouTube, go to our channel, and just basically watch the previous live episodes. But if you still like your iTunes and Spotify, we're catching up. So it's just going to take some time because, some people say I do procrastinate. So there you go.
That's the first time I've heard him. We're going to give that update a few times. I wasn't sure if the word procrastination was going to come into your spiel or not. But
Spiel.
Spiel. I love that
Spiel.
word. I don't hear anybody using the word spiel.
It's a good word.
It's a great word, isn't it? I have a spiel every day that I sit down with an initial therapy appointment. I have a whole spiel that I go through. It's like, that's my thing. So
That's your shtick.
My shtick and spiel. Those are similar. Are they acronyms or
No,
synonyms?
it's
or
just a
about-
word.
How about the Schwartz?
the
Schwartz.
That's
There's
shtick
Schwartz
and
is with you.
spiel.
Spaceballs.
I wasn't hanging around you with May the 4th coming up, so maybe when is that? That's
Next
May the
Saturday.
4th.
I
After
may
the 3rd.
be with you. You love that day coming up, don't you?
That's
That
my
is like
birthday.
your day. Huh?
That's actually my birthday.
May the 4th is?
Mm-hmm.
Did I not know that? I did know that.
Yeah, Disney's ruined it though.
I totally disagree. We'll have to talk about that off the air. Love Disney's knockoff shows and stuff, man. We
No,
Grogu came from this, man.
But I'm
He's
sure
the best character.
I'm sure some of them are good, but
Yes, absolutely. Grogu was born. How can you not like Baby
As
Yoda?
someone who loves Marvel, I would say that Disney's kind of gone over the top with all these things that happen, and I think Star Wars is in the same boat. They've just like saturated. I remember every year it'd be like the next Marvel movie is this big presentation. I was like, every time you turn around, there's a new show, new episode, new movie. It's like, oh my gosh.
Marvel did flood the market.
it sounds
So
like
did
he's
Star
agreeing
Wars.
with me, kinda.
That's not what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying Disney did the same thing
Are
to
you hearing it
Lucasfilms
now?
and Star
yeah,
Wars
yeah, it's pretty clear now.
as they did with Marvel. It's
you hear me now?
over
I'm trying to change the
oversaturation.
subject, but he's not letting me.
Trying to prove a point.
But interesting enough, just side note, have you seen the 50s YouTube videos they have where they're doing movies, but they're using AI to do it as if it was filmed in the 50s? Have you seen this?
No, but that sounds fun.
You got to check it out. They have like
Sounds fun.
no, they have like Terminator. They have New Hope, Phantom Menace, Lord of the Rings, but it's all filmed as if it was filmed with actors in the 50s. It is spooky. I'm telling you, it looks so real. It's crazy.
Now that we've lost half of our listening
Yeah.
audience, let's get to.
Okay.
We have missed. Neil, what did we do with Down the Rabbit Hole? I think we had one that was with. I'm actually not remembering. I remember one of them.
Something
kinda.
about a hole or something.
There was
He
Mel's
went off
Hole
on-
was one time. Yeah,
And then y'all talk about Bigfoot on I think on the same episode. Who was that guy anyway?
that was Jack, my buddy Jack. He
Okay.
lives up here, and he's
Yeah.
yeah. I'm trying to think what the first one because I think Mel's Hole was the last one, and I'm trying to think
That's
what the
right,
first
Mel's
one.
Hole.
I know
The
he-
first one was the one I was thinking about. It was where he had a really interesting question that I could have just gone in. And it was down the hole looking at like the psychological aspects of like propaganda and
marketing, the subliminal marketing. and stuff.
Subliminal marketing is exactly
Right.
what it was. Yeah. So we had a couple of cool down the rabbit holes. Sounds like you picked up
Cool.
on the Mel's Hole thing,
Yep.
which down the rabbit hole and the Mel's Hole. That was. I actually read about that after the show. I was like, wow, this is crazy stuff. Actually, Jack's giving me a couple things since then. Man, he lives that stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's his that's his ADHD. That's the
He's-
Jack's Hole.
He sent me one on the energy from nothing thing, and it's been a technology that's been around for a while, and I'm like, wow, that sounds actually really convincing. Like, yeah, I'd love to spend a day in Jack's head. Maybe that would be entertaining.
You'll have to mention to him about the orca new species that I mentioned to you before the show.
Yeah, I'll talk to him
He
about
might
that.
think that's interesting.
So where are we going, Mr. Cloninger? You got to down the rabbit hole. We have
Ye-
two statements usually, or
No,
two
no,
topics.
no.
Oh, we're
Remember, we
going
stopped
just
doing
with
it.
the one.
We stopped
did-
doing it. Remember?
We did stop doing it.
Yeah, he stopped giving us a choice. He's like, I'm just gonna talk
Yeah,
about
we're not
this.
choosing
Yeah.
anymore. All right, what we got? Where are we going?
This one's I got off of a website called Stat News, and Americans have been reporting more anxiety and depression and stuff over the last recent years. We've had numerous episodes where he talked about different things. And I'm going to ask y'all just to kind of throw a couple things out, like reasons why we've discussed that's this being the case. Why are we seeing more reported issues and people seeking more therapy and stuff?
Everything seems to be on the rise: anxiety, depression, this type of thing. The proposed notion is isolation, the
COVID,
effects of COVID, the nature
internet,
of social
media.
Yeah, those are the high hitters.
You got any other ones you want to throw in there?
Upbringing.
Okay, so
Family dynamics,
Family dynamics,
substance abuse,
keeping
entitlement.
entitlement. Everyone got a trophy.
Awareness.
Those poor millennials get picked on.
People talking about it more, all kinds of other things.
Yep.
So with all those things in mind, I want to point out that now they're having veterinarians are reporting a rise in pets on Prozac and Zoloft.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So that's on the rise, and I wanted to kind of see what y'all's take is why that's happening, because I think most of the stuff we just talked about, other than the social media. No, wait a minute. Actually, we probably could say social media, because I've seen these videos where they have like channels for dogs and channels for cats now.
Social media.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so that is a rabbit hole. I never knew what to expect with you, brother. You know where my brain goes first with that, honestly, is that when you go to a vet now. I don't mean to piss off the vets out there.
I know where he's
so
going with this right now.
Yeah, we're doing so much more care. I mean, you give an animal like X-rays and CAT scans, and you have a dental plan, and you do all of these things. I mean, we never used to do that for my dogs growing up, right? We did do that for my kids. Please, no hate mail. But I think that there's probably a little bit of follow through with that as well, because we've always had anxious dogs. Now we've got nice physical therapy things for dogs, just as much as we've learned some of these neurological things and PT things for humans. Like you'll get a thunder wrap. It's like a very tight body wrap for a dog that
keep
you
them calm during those thunderstorms and stuff.
Yeah, your dog could probably use some of that.
I had one before. She was way worse.
Yes, right. So I think there's probably, just as with awareness has risen with mental health, we've applied that to animals like we've applied all the other medical treatments. So that's my thinking. I don't think I subscribe to the fact that there's increased anxiety for animals. I don't know that I'm buying that.
Maybe there's not increased anxiety for humans. Maybe it's the same case.
Well, then you go to the idea of increased identification of the mental health problems.
Right.
But I'm not so sure that fully applies either, because of the new way we're living in social media and all that kind of stuff. So, but you don't get that effect with dogs. So let me get this right. Would you say this come from Stat
News?
Stat News is saying there's actually increases.
And the thing is that they really can't give accurate statistics on it.
Yeah, where's the data from 1955?
Well, no, they really can't, because the veterinary medical records chain through the United States is not connected like humans.
They didn't take good records.
Well, I mean, they're not all interconnected. You can't just
there's no social security number for a dog to tie it from one vet clinic to the next.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's got to be hard to study.
Well, plus dogs and cats not going to live as long as humans. So
yeah, but they have still some similar symptomology, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I mean,
you could observe anxiety.
You could have a patient come to you for 30 years.
True. Well, sure. Yeah. So the long-term study.
You're probably not going to have a dog come to the same vet for 30 years.
Longitudinal studies would be hard to do. What do you think?
If you did, it's a good vet.
I got to see what you're thinking, man.
What I would say through that is, what I think it's an animal takes on the personality of its owners. And if you have people who own animals and they have high anxiety, that animal is going to pick up on those characteristics and those vibes. So I could see, because it's just like you can have two of the same breed. Because like I said, our dog had a certain personality, even though it was a Wheaten Terrier, because of how we acted in our house. That's how he adapted. If he was at someone else's house, he would have acted differently because of the anxiety, the emotions, the energy. I mean, dogs and cats are very sensitive to how we interact. And so you think about it. If someone's already on always high anxiety, well, guess what? Their dog's going to kind of always be slightly on high anxiety.
Let's go a little further deeper into this hole. I love this, right? So, do dogs have a neuronal process in their brains and bodies and such?
All animals do.
Right? And they're very similar to the humans that we've studied and we've learned. Definitely a little bit more sophisticated in our neurological process. But neurology has taken leaps and bounds to learn about how this system works. And one of the things that we've definitely learned about is something called mirroring neurons or mirror neurons. You ever hear of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Neil, like on point, because it is very reasonable to suggest that human beings have increased in our mental health experience, and the mirroring neurons in animals have picked up from the owners and such. I would really be curious if the article that came from that if they studied animals in general, I suspect that's only domesticated animals, which would further go into the idea that mirroring neurons in the neuronal process of animals is the cause.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I guess it probably would be because I don't think they're going to be like.
Well, you could study primates. You could study wildlife,
but it's got to be
birds and all kinds of different migration and things that animals do.
But the animals for like treatment of stress and stuff had to be an animal that's around them enough,
right? Well, domesticated.
To know, yeah.
This has got to be. I would love to see a follow-up research on apes and animals and even fish in.
But what about animals in zoos?
Well, they would have mirroring neurons from humans.
They won't be
sure.
domesticated.
They're domesticated in the sense that they're around humans,
right? But I mean, the lions and tigers and bears on my, they're not
probably not going to be
right. But I mean, if you got a bear that's freaking out, there's they might medicate them or something.
Of course, then again, even lions and animals, bears and such, I mean, they're close to the glass, and they have a relationship with the public in that way. Mm-hmm. And I would bet you would see zoo animals having a similar thing. That'd be cool to test. Yeah, I think you're right on, Neil. Mirroring neurons.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like I said, we have enough. I just seen it with other things. They say, animals, dogs start looking like their owners and stuff like that. I know that's a little bit different, but
they say they look like them.
Yeah, you see those pictures of like the two people the person, the dog, yeah. And it's like they almost look exactly the same.
Let's
it's
go
one of
further down this rabbit hole.
That's a whole nother thing. But no, it's behaviors. It's learned. It's all that other stuff. Because I'd be intrigued to look at a house that has multiple dogs and have you have the teenage kid who has anxiety and that's like his dog and or her dogs and see like how that dog reacts versus like the dad's dog that just sits on the couch and they just chill. Like I would really be intrigued to see how broken down that could get into when you look at who the dog hangs out with in the house and see if it really creates that type of thing.
Well, I think it also going along with what you're saying, it's not just the owners, it's visitors too. I'll give you an example, and Chris can tell you this too. The dog I have, when you first
can
come
we
to
say
meet
his
him,
name?
Marvin.
Oh, I love Marvin.
So when you first meet Marvin, the thing is, everybody, including Chris, thought, "Oh, you got to talk to him. Oh, it's okay. How are you doing?" I'm like, "Leave him alone. Just ignore him." He's like, "Oh, it's okay, Marvin." I'm like, "Chris, just leave him alone." No, it's okay, man. Don't talk to him. Chris, just leave him alone. You leave him alone. You ignore him, and then he's like, "Hey, what, you don't think I'm a threat or what's going on?" He calms down.
It works.
Leave dogs alone until they come to you.
It works.
It works.
What kind of dog is Marvin?
I think he's Jack Russell. He's probably
oh God, yeah, that's gonna be. Yeah, just leave those things alone.
He is an anxious dog. There's no doubt.
And he's
about
much
it,
calmer than he used to be. He used to be just crazy. Now he's just
annoying. Calming down.
It was
his
worse.
Old age.
Oh my God, yes. He was.
Well, I met him years ago, but
no. When back in like 2016, he was crazy.
Wow,
he was like a crack dog or something.
How did he do in storms?
I don't recall him having an issue with that, but I mean, it'd be
really?
like now he's getting like separation anxiety and stuff. Chloe's not around the house as much as she used to be,
so he's all sad.
He's not getting his attention he was getting before.
Poor Marvin.
So now he like whines and stuff when I go to work, and
So I've been thinking about episode 268 a little bit, to be honest with you, in my practice this month. So this was male sexual abuse / domestic violence, and we talked about survivor mode. So the 3 questions: do you know what survivor mode is and where it comes from? And are men victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence? It's an easy question. I hope you recognize that as an easy yes. You didn't hear me.
Yeah, I'm just sitting there imagining in a relationship.
Yes, I love your reaction. Go a little further. Are men victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence? Lastly, do men handle being a victim differently? But yeah, your reaction is puzzlement if you see on the live feed.
So you're talking like a
YouTube.
boyfriend, girlfriend,
Yeah,
like...
absolutely. All sorts of domestic partnerships and such.
But there's a requirement. I mean, if something's going to work, they have to be aroused.
But there's also the physiology of your body's going to react whether you want it to or not sometimes.
It does. In sexual abuse. In fact, a lot of times victims are freaking out about, like, why am I responding to this? Why is this happening? Do I like it per se and all? So, yeah, for sure.
Maybe they do.
Or it goes back to the idea, because I think I saw a video about that where this guy was talking about, like, anytime he's ever turned his, like, girlfriend down for, like, and, like, her advances because he's tired, doesn't want to, whatever, like, the emotional trauma that he goes through because what she puts him through because he turned her down. It's like, but yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it can happen. Once again, there's women that are very controlling. Oh, so supposedly in Australia, there was a power lifter girl that a robber broke into her house. She basically knocked him out and then pumped him full of Viagra and then had her way with him for like 24 hours or something.
Oh,
and finally they like went to the cops because he broke in, and like, what did the cops do? Like, because he broke in, but then she did all this other stuff. And so you talk about, we have medication now that technically you don't have to be involved. But yeah, that's something that I read about in Australia.
He deserved it. He broke in the house.
I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, seriously, to bring us into a little bit of levity with this, like, honestly, no one deserves sexual abuse or domestic violence, either emotional, physical, or sexual. And the reality of this is, like, absolutely the answer is yes to the question, do men experience this? And this happens a lot of times for young men. Young boys are, affected by, sexual abuse or violence in the home, and all sorts of things are going on. And it's curious because you went in a different direction, Adam, but I think a lot of times people are very confused and puzzled about how it is so that men could be victims of domestic violence.
Well, I mean, I can see it with an older family member or something like that, but like their loved one, I'm having trouble with that one.
Yeah, I mean, the emotional abuse. As a matter of fact, I'll go to this. Where did we land? One of the things that is very, very strong and clear in a difference is even more so than women that are victims of different things going on. Men are suffering in silence. There's not really an avenue or venue to be able to recognize, yeah, you know what, I am yelled at and belittled. I am put down and controlled. I am not comfortable walking on eggshells and essentially living in terror. Now, there's a little bit of a difference with the physical violence because it's harder for men to be victimized in such a way where we're dominated physically, because generally we're stronger in stature and in just in development. But even then, I guess if you got a power lifter in Australia, that's not always the case. But even when it is, the fact of the matter is, I'm thinking of right now, literally somebody was talking about sandals being thrown at him. And that, what is he supposed to do? Go and jack her up and put her on the wall? Like, that's not going to fly. You can't do that really in response. The age-old childhood understanding in male world is you don't ever hit a woman. So when you're getting hit, you're getting punched, pinched, stabbed, or items thrown at you. That is physically violent.
Well, and here's another catch when it comes to that. If you're going to try to restrain them for your safety or their safety, technically they could get charged with kidnapping.
Kidnap?
Yes, if you restrain someone, you can get charged with kidnapping. So if she's attacking him and he restrains her or does something to like put her in a room to keep her from coming after him, if it's against her will, legally she could then try to press charges as him kidnapping her.
And he can press charges for self-defense too.
Right, he can't. But then the question is, in the courts, there's still that issue of the man versus woman situation, and it's getting better.
To your point, Neil and Adam, your retort. Very clearly, the legal system has gotten better at this. I have had in my therapy experiences in the more recent years, men absolutely are calling the police or having the police called. And the police are doing an assessment. They will separate you, talk to him, talk to her. And if there are marks on his body and there are not marks on her, she will go to jail. That's going to happen.
Good.
Yeah, that's happening.
Guys, be the one that calls.
For real. Like, really, because the code of silence would say, well, I'm not going to call the police. Why am I going to call the police? And the answer, do you have an answer? Why would that be the case, Adam?
Because just the same reason he's talking about. She's
Right.
in that, you put him in that room to keep yourself safe. She's in the room now. She calls the police and says, hey, put me in here.
You need to call. It is about protecting yourself legally. It's also about getting a realization that this behavior that you've done, it's not okay. It's not okay. And a police officer taking a woman to a cell and filing a charge, you will have to answer to that charge. And that can really reconcile, like, hey, like, I need to stop this. Because it is such a difficult thing for anyone to experience these types of experiences in life. But for a man, it is really, really like just this code of silence is just it's so much for a woman experiencing domestic violence or sexual abuse to not tell anybody. It's doubly or triply so, for a dude. Who are you going to talk to, Adam, if you have sexual abuse as a 10-year-old boy? I mean, are you going to mommy and saying, something happened? You're not going to tell your friends, like,
right.
What are you going to do? Particularly if it's, male on male, which oftentimes is the case. It's such a terrible, terrible world. I feel compelled to point out that this will not defeat me, Neil. We had Chris on the show talking about that, which we developed a program. You want to kick that?
I thought you did a good job. But yeah, so we talked to Chris. He talks about his story, and basically it's giving you the tools to, to get past, previous sexual abuse. It's thiswillnotdefeatme.com. It's there's basically an intro section you can watch, see what you think about it. The idea is it gives you a starting point. If you're not ready to feel comfortable talking to other people, you can go through this, watch the intro, go through this thing, do it at your own pace, kind of open up and help you start processing what's going on. So it's definitely not the full-blown answer to a lot of stuff, but it's a great opening way for people to deal with this in the safety of their own home, that in their own time, and those. So yeah, so thiswillnotdefeatme.com. Go check like I said, go sign up for the free intro thing just to see what you think about it.
And you said Chris. We mean Chris Davos is the co-host of the whole program that we went through, and he did. Yeah, he was absolutely courageous in sharing rather extensive sexual and physical and violent abuse that he endured as a kid, and then kept inside his whole self. And his, for 25 years of policing was one of the things that he got into as an adult, and didn't tell anyone about any of this until more recently in his life. And he's totally come out, gotten well, and is helping the world as a result. So pretty cool stuff. thiswillnotdefeatme.com. Yeah, how else do men handle this differently? And then I want to talk about some of the recovery stuff. I can't tell you how many times I'm dealing with in therapy men that have endured some type of sexual, misbehavior and offense. And they very commonly will question their own masculinity because of what we were kind of talking about before. You do respond to when people are engaging you sexually. Even if you're an unwilling participant, you will have the physical experiences as though you're having sex in every way. And it makes people really begin thinking, wow, dang, am I gay? Is my orientation, did I just not know that my orientation is such a way. Also, your sexual appetite is really changed into what you're drawn to, and you begin to experience porn, which kind of has that tendency anyway. And you get a lot of twisted feelings and orientation and thoughts about self because it's never even been identified that you've endured sexual abuse, which is another major factor that is the way that it operates differently. I think most of the time, is it fair to say that women kind of know in their own mind's eye, though I want to be careful, not all the time at all. There are many women that have had sexual abuse and don't even realize it. That's absolutely a thing. But I think that probably is more so the case for men. There are men that are married in their middle ages right now that are enduring abuse of some kind and don't even categorize it or realize it. So the level of lack of insight about this for themselves is a huge component that I think is not specific to men, but accentuated for men.
Well, I think part of it, when in those long-term relationships, it's like the frog in the pot of water that starts. They turn it on, and the frog doesn't realize it gets boiled because they've been in this relationship, and just like in any relationship, you have to work on it. So if one of the people starts having that hyperactive, like controlling personality that just expounds on itself, you might not realize it. Over the course of 5 years, you could go from happy couple to now she's controlling everything he's doing, or vice versa. And it just kind of slowly happened. It was, she told you, no, you can't go hang out with the guys one night. And then it's like, oh, don't look at women, or don't do this. Or like, it could be just slowly trickled down. By the time it's done, he goes to work. He comes home. He does whatever she asks him to do. Like he can't do anything on his own. Like it could easily be for the domestic violence and that time. It can be a frog in a pot of water kind of situation.
It's a gradual, progressive nature to the relationship and the dynamics that go on. Now that happens with women also, but I think you're right, and more so for men, leading to the ignorance of that being an issue because it just gradually grew. Yeah, it
sounds like the show is more toward just like abuse in general, and not what like I took it when you first mentioned sexual abuse. I'm still having trouble with the sexual abuse by your partner.
Yeah, what do you mean?
For the man having being sexually abused by their woman, I'm still having a problem with that.
Yeah, well,
I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I don't think it's going to be very common.
Yeah, I mean, the myth is that men always want to have sex like rabbits, and they're never really interested in saying no and that type of a thing. I think, when you really get into a sexual relationship, you can really term it even sexual abuse to a certain extent when a woman is very manipulative about the sexual relationship and denying versus forcing. But if a dude says, I'm not interested, they're very much not interested. No still means no, but can a guy say, no, I don't want to do this? It's like there's weird gender norms that go into that. But this can also be a denial of, and that's a very harsh thing to do. Or bargaining, you're going to have to do this and this and this. And I mean, now we've got fetishes that are developed with sub-dom relationships. I mean, there's all kind of things that are kind of going on.
Well, what about the guys who maybe there's a girl that's hyperly obsessed, maybe they're not in a relationship yet, and she wants something and he doesn't? That's that same idea, because I've heard stories about guys who just slept with this person because the other person just kept pushing. It doesn't mean they wanted it with that particular person, because guys are pretty much tuned to we have to procreate. But when it comes down to it, the grand scheme of things is just because you do it doesn't mean you really want to. Or the high school boys that are manipulated by their teachers. That kind of situation has become a big thing now.
Oh, man. The age differentials are a big deal that are starting to happen regularly. And I'm talking about 40-year-olds getting together with high school seniors. And we're supposed to be excited about that. We're supposed to be happy about that. We got the Mary Jane and all this kind of thing. And young men do not feel good and safe in those relationships. That I would maintain that very clearly. Does that help with some thoughts?
Yeah, but I'm still thinking that in
a
99.9% of the time in a relationship, the man can stop it if it's the
And I guess the deciding differences would be sexual abuse would be more kind of outside of relationships, where domestic violence is more in the relationship.
But when he first mentioned it, he mentioned sexual abuse. I'm like thinking totally different than most of the stuff that y'all are talking about now, or just domestic abuse, like demeaning him and everything else. It has very little to do with what I thought you were talking about. So that's all I was saying.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there to go on with how there's differences as well. There's because of the idea. Part of what you're talking about, I think, fits with this difference too. Men are really considering themselves major complex and insecurities around weakness. To your point, Adam, if this is happening in your home and you're suffering with the code of silence about it, it's like, what kind of a wimp, or other bad words, right? What kind of a wimp am I? Like, I can't even stand up for myself. I get the idea that my buddies, I get jokes all the time. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Because I don't know how to, now that the water's got really hot, Neil, and I'm the frog in the pan, I don't know how to deal with this. And so I just get roasted. And the shame is even bigger as it relates to that. Also, the doubt or fear or very big reality that just totally making this up and going with your example, Adam. If I come to you as a buddy and I say this, is going on in my house, are you going to believe me? Like, how am I supposed to have that conversation?
Sure, I believe you, but I'll be like, well, why don't you just stop her?
Yeah, it's not that easy when you've got a whole culture of relationship kind of involved in this. Same thing why we get so confused why a woman is a domestic violence victim and goes from one abuse situation to the next to the next to the next.
To me, that's totally different.
How's that different?
Well, because physically, a man's 99.9% of the time is going to be able to prevent a woman from doing something.
Not emotionally.
Not trying to be sexist or anything like that. We're physically stronger. We got hormones and stronger tendons and ligaments. It's just a fact. It's not like
I love that.
That's why we got separate sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, I love that you're going through this, and I appreciate the conversation with it, because it can. I think even more than I'm realizing, it probably is hard for people to believe, particularly other men, to believe that men can be caught into these circumstances. And I do see this in my therapy room. I wouldn't say often in that way specifically that you're thinking about it, but that happens with some level of regularity. And you can't deal with it because I'm not going to be a weakling, and I don't want to feel the shame and get the jokes and be ribbed by the buddies and all this kind of stuff. And so it just continues to be perpetrated into perpetuity. I think a lot of people end up just dying with these relationships kind of going on all their life. And it's sad. It's absolutely terribly destructive. So let's get on to how do we manage this, and how do we recover with this? And also, before I forget to mention it, we did kind of rave the show around survivor mode kind of as well. Did you remember at all, Neil? Was that a new concept for you, the survivor mode, when we talked about substance abuse families and where that comes from?
No, it makes sense because you adapt to deal with it. We've talked about it before with the family dynamics and stuff like that. So the idea is you figure out how do you shut it down to live your life? How do you deal with those things so you're not triggered or don't trigger the other person? So you live your life just basically, once again, you're just trying to survive. So,
and we've talked about survivor mode on the show as well before, so I'm sure you picked up on that way. So how do we deal with this? How do we recover is really kind of where we landed. Above all, one of the things I really want to put out there is it's really super important to do exactly the opposite of what we're talking about happens. We just don't be alone with it for sure. If you have friends that you can trust, Adam, I think that some of the things you struggle with, if somebody came to you, that you trust and they trust you and you talk with them, is it true to say that generally people are not going to be belittling if you talk about some struggle that you're having?
Oh, I think so. I mean, like if you, like I
Yeah.
said, if you came to me and tell me, I'd be asking, well, why didn't you stop her? But
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't be saying, well, she was or not. I wouldn't
The
be
hell's
like
wrong?
that.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what I think men are afraid of from the schoolyard. I mean, really, like that lives in our head that you would make fun of me. I'm giving you armament for jokes and, slams, and you're never going to forget this.
I think really when it comes down to brass tacks, if guys really care about their buddies, and if it came down to it, they wouldn't do that. But I feel like there's a lot of guys, they don't want to burden their friends with their problems, or they don't want to burden, like, guys really are go alone and I'll just put some dirt on it and let's go.
Yeah.
I don't want so I think there's a lot of times when it's not, I don't know how much of it is ridicule. It might be 50-50, but I think a lot of it is like, I don't want to burden my buddies with this. Like, I don't want to make a big deal about it. I don't want to do this because, like I said, I think if any one of us came to each one of us and said, hey, I have a problem, the three of us, while we kind of joke and play around, if it was serious, like, we would sit there, we'd listen, we'd go through that process. And I think a lot of guys are that way. If you have your buddy circle, like, if something happened, they'd drop everything and do it. But then again, now you're putting your burden on someone else. And as a guy, you carry burdens. You don't pass them on to someone else.
Right. Yeah, that's a powerful reality. And I will point out, I know a lot of women feel that way too. I don't want to talk about what's going on because I don't want to burden my friends kind of as well. But I think you're right. We come together and solve solutions. I think you said it perfectly right at the end there. We
Figure this thing out together.
Well, that's the answer. That's the answer. Thank you. I love that. That's one of the many reasons why I love the opening of that show that way, because we do want to take care of burdens and carry them, not share them and give them out to others. What else came to mind, Neil or Adam, in your brain that people can do, in order to really deal with the recovery of this type of a thing? You remember what we talked about or how that went?
No, I have the notes, so that helps.
That helps too.
Well, I can say this. Don't think there's not a way out.
Right, and I know on the notes we have make a plan, right?
Yeah, sometimes the way to address it is instead of having counseling with that other person, just get out of it. Yes, it's hard, but you can get out of relationships.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I was married before and divorced now, so
right. You know that.
Yeah,
it's a scary proposition to get out, and you can feel very stuck. I'm going to lose all of my money. I'm going to have to pay alimony. I'm going to get, railroaded in my industry. It's going to look bad for me.
What about the kids?
Sometimes it's worth it.
Right.
If I had to do it all over again, I would.
So he says. Do you have thoughts, Neil?
No.
Okay.
I am happily married right now.
He takes a pass. Usually therapy and support groups, in not doing it alone, but they definitely help with these types of life events in a group, small groups in church or neighborhood, friendship networks. I mean, definitely don't be alone. I thought that it's an important thing to kind of highlight what we were talking about with the legal thing, like to be sure and be careful. There are legal ramifications to this. You have to protect yourself legally. So do call the police, and that now you can begin to trust, at least in the States. I don't know what it's like in your country, but in most countries around the world, I believe it is getting better where authorities recognize men can be victims of these things kind of as well. But important for men, make sure there's evidence, you don't want to, have this turn around and be the victim of violence and then be the victim of the law coming after you. That's like a double whammy. Boundary management, focusing on forgiveness. Violence is something that men can get into retorting with, and you have to be careful. If you do just pound out the lady because she's thrown the sandal at you, that comes back on you. So you really have to be careful about, turning to the muscle system and the tendons and everything at them that we have. That just compounds the problem and makes it potentially worse. So those are some things from a guy's perspective. Yeah, I don't know. We need some. We need to move on. I think from that's a sad topic. It's a sad topic.
Can I say one thing about a video I saw this week?
Yes, please. Hopefully, it's got some humor.
Not really, but
Oh,
that's
boy.
okay. So there was a YouTube short of a Vietnam veteran, and he was talking about the difference between those that fought in World War II and those that fought in the Vietnam. Okay, and the recovery. So those that fought in World War II, when they were done, they got put on a ship for 2 to 3 weeks with their buddies that were, they were in the trenches with them. You had 2 to 3 weeks to decompress, talk, relate, get it out of your system, and then when you landed here, when you landed in the U.S., 2 things that happened is 1, you got it out, but 3, how were the World War II veterans treated versus the Vietnam vets treated?
Right.
So Vietnam, you went out there, you did all this atrocious, horrible stuff because the military told you to do it. You're on a plane ride back. You have 12 hours to basically deal with it. You land.
Not talk with anybody because you're on a plane.
Right. And then you land, and how do they treat you? They treat you like crap because of all the political stuff. So, and when I saw that, I was like, it makes a lot more sense why the great, the Great War, whatever was the people from that, the Greatest Generation, they had time to talk to someone, not be alone, process it, validate their feelings and see what's going on and really go through that whole process. So it was an eye opener to see that video because I'd never thought about that 2 to 3 week window as they came back.
Point.
So going back to the trauma that you deal with this, don't be alone, talk about it. Chris Davos talked about once he started telling his story and getting out, it allowed him to process it. So just keep that in mind. And I just saw like, how do I fit this in? Because I just want to bring it up because it's a cool realization.
I'm glad that you
that's
did,
a really good point.
and it's. I never thought about it in that reverse fashion, but I've kind of commented many times when I'm working with trauma in session. I will talk about how, when it regards to PTSD specifically, man, we learned so much about PTSD from the Vietnam War because we did everything exactly wrong that with our men, and usually men at that point. There weren't as many women that were in the military at that time. And so when now we do go as a group and you come back as a group, you have debriefing time in Kuwait, you're riding jet skis and debriefing and whatnot, we now understand you've got to have that time. I never thought about it in World War II. That just happened naturally because you only mode of transportation was primarily boats.
Right, to get that many people across, you had to just, like I said, a 2 or 3 week journey. And
what was happening on that boat is healing. Yeah, that's awesome. Never thought about it that way, but that's absolutely part of what we want to do with recovery. If you hadn't gotten it, understand, don't be alone for sure. All right, episode 269, we banged into moral courage. The questions were, do you know what moral courage is? Do you think it's hard to execute? And what are the challenges to live this out? This is actually something that is one of the very few things that I kind of do from time to time in content regeneration. Love and Logic. I may actually get into doing that next month in parenting stuff just because we haven't talked about it for a while. But Moral Courage was one of the ones we did very early on in the history of the show, and I talked about it about a year ago, and about now I wanted to recover it because it's such a difficult reality to speak up and into difficult situations, such as male domestic violence, or your bestie girlfriend who's dealing with something. Do we step into a situation and execute how this goes? So, do you think it's hard to execute moral courage? Do you know what it is, and what are the challenges to living this out? Because of time, I don't want to go far into it, and we've redone this content, but I thought we'd just spend a moment or two on the current event that we did that show on purpose, which was the James and Jennifer Crumley story. Did you happen to catch that, Adam?
No, I did not.
Oh, really? This was the parent of the mass shooter in a school that essentially horrible parenting.
This is the one where they're being prosecuted.
They got prosecuted for the kids' actions in the school. Yeah. Well, a little follow-up that's completely unrelated, but I literally got interested because I heard a story on the way to work today where a 4th grader in the local area here in the Charlotte area brought a gun to school. And it was a question. What do we do with the kid? And what he said, do we charge the parents, was the question that nobody was answering at this point. But isn't that a thing now? A 4th grader takes a gun to school, and the question comes up, do we charge the parents? It's an interesting, I'm concerned about the precedent. I guess I'll tip my hand as I throw it over to you guys and say, like, what do you think briefly about, that whole scenario that kind of went on and how moral courage kind of factors in? Do we speak up? How do we speak up? Do we charge the parents? How does this get dealt with?
Charging the parents, I can see that, but there's got tippy toe on that because at some point there's got to be a cutoff.
A cutoff? What do you mean a cutoff?
Well, I mean, now you got an adult. At some point, you set a precedence and you set another precedent, Before you know it, you got somebody that's 30 years old and you're prosecuting a 60-year-old parent because of what he did when his kid was 10 years old.
Well,
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, obviously it's minor children.
Right.
You are only going to be held legally
but
liable.
But you set a precedence on the next thing you know, now you got a 17-year-old.
Well, yeah.
Now you got a 19-year-old.
Well, I don't know how old was Ethan. He was a teenager, but I don't remember how old he was.
Ethan was Crumley's kid. That wasn't middle school, was it?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe you can Google it real quick and give us an answer for that and I'll ramble on a little bit about. It's great that people are speaking up on an event. I'm not going to have time to go into it because I want to get to the third show. Just know it is really hard to speak your knowledge and to get involved in a situation. Like the neighbors for the Crumleys and people that may have known Ethan and, speaking out, people might think, oh, yeah, I would say stuff. But we spent a lot of time in that episode and when we do this topic to emphasize how difficult it really is because it's not my business. I don't want to cause a problem. I don't want to upset my friend.
I don't want to get involved.
I don't want to
get sucked into it.
This is dangerous for me.
Yep.
How will this blow back?
Mm-hmm.
We have whistleblower laws to protect people, and still people see bad things going on in corporations and refuse to say anything because I don't want to lose my job. I mean, this is hard.
Yep.
Very hard. And even harder when it's just an emotional thing, I would maintain. So, did you get an age, or do you know?
He was 15.
15. So he's a little older.
So I mean, once again, the judge kept saying when they talk about the verdict or the whole process, they're like, this isn't about bad parenting.
Right.
This is about negligence to prevent. Because when you look at the track record, you look at the times up to this, he was having problems. They didn't really get him help. And on top of that, they bought him the gun he used at the school. There's too many things up to this point that it's not just, Now,
wasn't the gun supposed to have been for target practice only?
It was supposed to be something for him to do, but the idea is you still, because of the things they saw and they're just like, hey, you can get over this, you can whatever.
Right.
You don't, if you think your son or daughter has problems with, whatever. My sister, wow. But so say think your kid has a drug problem. You don't buy them more drugs and say, yeah, it'll be okay. Or you don't buy them a 12-pack of beer when they have a substance abuse issue. If a kid has problems and there's something there, your first thing to do is not buy them a weapon like that. You find other constructive ways. You take them on hikes. You get them out of the situation. You maybe buy them.
Hunting. Get a bow.
Yeah, but it's still the idea.
Take that to school too.
Yeah, but
you're not gonna shoot multiple people.
There's no Katniss out there where they, But yeah, so and that was the issue. Was they didn't have the, they didn't take the moral courage to actually try to address their kid's problem. They tried to mask it with other stuff, and they tried to do this. And then once again, I feel like there's almost more moral courage to prosecute the parents because of the stigmas that this could lead to.
It's interesting if we wanted to go down the rabbit hole a little bit with that. Was this a case of moral courage to charge the parents or something else? It's an interesting argument.
And it is one of those few things where, the kid did that and he didn't kill like we talked about Sandy Hook. That guy killed his grandmother who then he took the guns. You can't do anything about that. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And who do you hold accountable? Like you said, moral courage. What is the moral grounds that we have to stand up to these situations? But then what comes out of this? Okay, so they charge these two parents. Now they're going to be in jail for 10, 15 years. What does that mean? What is this? What comes from this? Why are we setting this precedence? What's going on with it? And so that becomes the next question as the next case appears.
Were they found guilty?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
they were.
Well, and then on
Actually,
top of that,
recently.
the dad like was caught on like jail recording, basically threatening the DA. Like when he
Oh,
gets
was he?
out, like I'm like, okay, this guy's
Oh
just
my
an
gosh.
idiot. But that's
Good call, guys. Good call. All right, we need to move on, but I want to mention the idea of how do we build the ability to do moral courage. So, and we talked a little bit more on the show of, this is the same as developing internal resiliency. Again, you hear a theme with this, like don't go it alone. Get a group of people that can speak up. And I talked about the case of my dog, my neighbor's dog in my neighborhood in that episode 269. So have a good source, close friends, wisely. You accumulate your 5 closest relationship. Ask good questions. Speak up. Be a leader, not a follower. Forgive yourself. Make good choices. These are all ways that you kind of develop internal resiliency and whatnot. Have honesty with self. Destroy the shame and guilt. Improve self-awareness. Really focus on empathy. Truly thinking of others from their perspective. Self-discipline. Learn how to handle negative feedback so that when you do get busted, man, you're tripping over there. What's going on with the microphone, Adam?
It like fell. I don't know why. It like all of a
It's like
sudden
crashing.
it like fell down. I was like trying to get it back up. I guess it's close now.
it's good enough.
Do you feel ridiculed? I saw Neil
No.
busting out over there.
He's like, what are you doing?
What are you doing over there?
I expect that from Chris. Chris is the fidgeter over there. He does it and he'll catch us up. I'm like, but Adam's usually really good. So it's like,
I didn't touch anything though. It just all of a
Yes, you
sudden.
did. It just goes. It didn't go by itself, man.
And this is what I'm hearing in my head. And he's over thinking, hurry up, man. I have to switch over to the camera in a minute.
Anticipating.
Chris
Okay.
is gonna stop talking in a minute.
The language of substance abuse.
Yeah, what's that all about? You mentioned it earlier. What are you talking about?
Neil, did you know what we were talking about before we talked about it? I purposely made it as a curious title, not for clickbait, but to get people's brains to think about, like, what does this mean?
I'll tell you what, doing the show notes, I was trying to figure out what the heck you were doing because I'm like, where's more of the information? Because you just literally legit had like 20 words and phrases just down. I'm like, how do I format this? Like, what are these things? Did he forget commas? Like, it was really weird. But no, when I first saw it, I wasn't sure what was going on with it as far as where you were going for. Like, is it the dialogue and how people communicate that are in situations with substance abuse, or like I wasn't sure. I didn't know. But then once you talked about it, I was like, oh.
Right. So let me do that for you, Adam, and the listeners in review. Truly, this is one of the shows. I told Neil we do some shorts, and we're going to get back into doing reels and shorts a little bit to give you good little digestible bites of some of the content. And that particular show is going to be fantastic because each one of those words, Neil, is a concept or a theme that operates in substance abuse. And if you remember, as we were talking, I'm like thinking of all these other ones that weren't on my list. There's a plethora of cool word too, right? Spiel and plethora.
My wife hates it when I use that term. I use it all the time and she hates
really?
it.
The Three Amigos.
Oh, come on, man. Plethora is awesome. Anyway, plethora means there's a lot of these little phrases and such. So to clear this up for you, Adam, what this is what you learn and how to speak about, or developing an acute understanding of the depths of what the whole world of substance abuse means, right? So Neil's showing him the list of words, and Adam's checking this out, right? And so what I found very early on in my career is that being a substance abuse professional and understanding these things and identifying substance abuse issues with you, I would spend an exorbitant amount of time doing education. Like, it would be just like almost substance abuse 101. What's this term? And educating you about that and giving you information on this. I had all kinds of handouts and stuff that I would use. And so I would have to teach. Just teach.
Teach the language so they're going to talk about it intelligently.
What is withdrawal? What is addiction? What does tolerance mean? What is a blackout? I'm teaching all of these things. And so when somebody goes to rehab, you get taught all of this information. I mean, they come out with like a binder, thick binder full of all this information. And so it was fascinating to me to meet with somebody before they went to rehab and then after they went to rehab, and I pick back up with them because they know the language. It's also much easier in treatment when I'm in therapy relationship with you and I'm meeting you for the first time and I know you just came out of rehab because you've been taught the language. You know a lot of these concepts. So it's a really, really fascinating reality that I see that really is distinctly different for people that have experienced it and people that haven't. I thought you had a thought, Neil.
Well, I was just trying to think about because understanding the verbiage in the language and having that education can make a huge difference on
Outcomes.
Right, on the outcomes, because I kind of think about AA. The first step's admitting you have a problem. Well, if you're not educated enough to know what the problem is or what that means or the different things, putting a word to what's going on kind of helps you understand it better. Why do I go through these? Well, that's withdrawal. Okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, I'm not crazy. My body's revolting, or putting that kind of stuff to it allows you now to name it, process it, digest it, go through that thing. And then, once again, the more educated you are, the more you can put more logic behind it versus emotion.
Do you at least have the list that I created? Is that what you were showing?
Yeah, I have all the...
Just read the list to give people a flavor today.
All right, so addiction... Well, yeah, if you want more about addiction, go to episode 222. Just FYI.
We spent a lot of time on what is addiction, actually. And it's a good one to hit.
And then substance use disorder recovery... Recovering or recovered, which I'm guessing there's an interesting difference between those three terms.
There is.
Detoxification or detox, rehabilitation, rehab, 24-day treatment, IOP, intensive outpatient program.
He still uses acronyms. What's wrong with you, man?
It's the field, man.
Anonymous groups, early recovery, long-term recovery, withdrawal, post-acute withdrawal syndrome, relapse triggers, relapse prevention tools. So that's interesting that there's 3 different things about relapse as well.
There's a plethora of these terms.
Dual diagnosis, abstinence, codependency, enabling intervention, spirituality, higher power, harm reduction, lack of control, loss of control. Which now I'm going through some of the ones that Victoria brought up.
Yeah.
Spiraling, craving, progression, lifting the bottom, get off the spiral, which are interesting. Never satisfied, chasing the high, numb the pain, taking inventory, dry drunk. Those are some of the ones those are just the ones added.
It's a lot, right? And so interestingly enough, one of the things that we did is I actually asked Victoria, who isn't as much of a substance abuse professional, yet, because if you're a therapist listening to this, you need to get training on this, and she's going to do that, and so she can understand and help people and identify this stuff, because a lot of therapists do not speak the language. They do not understand substance abuse treatment. It's still super sad to me because it creates a major blind spot. I'm not trying to piss you off, therapists listening, but it's true. You have a major blind spot if you don't allow yourself to get educated about this. So I asked her just to think about the terms in substance abuse, and she listed as much as she could kind of brainstorm, and we went through it. And it was interesting because, do I remember correctly, Neil, she started out the list, right? And it was like, they were obviously kind of guesses, and they weren't really substance abuse terms. Like I remember 3 or 4 in a row. It was like, that's not really a part of the language. John and I agreed, but we talked about the concepts behind it. Yeah. So she was making up.
It has to be agreed upon terms. It can't be just ones that she knows and nobody else knows. It has to be.
It's not really agreed upon is the kind of the point. It's kind of like.
It needs to be a universal term. When you tell somebody what it means, you go to another therapist. They tell the same thing.
They all know.
That's what I mean.
Everyone who's a substance abuse professional who lives substance abuse, they know what a relapse trigger is. They understand one day at a time, and many of the things that we said. It's kind of like cricket. Like I don't understand the game of cricket. Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, so you could speak about the culture of the cricket. You could use a lot of the terms that are specific to cricket, and I'm lost. I got no idea what you're talking about.
You love cricket, man. It's awesome game to play.
It looks boring. I'm sorry, you listening in
It's
Australia.
a lot like baseball.
It's God.
But you can run back and forth multiple times.
The scores are ridiculous. Isn't
you can score. One person can score over and over.
So here's a question I have about cricket. Because I'm gonna aren't these games 5 days long or something crazy like that, or are these supposedly different matches?
Cricket game goes for days.
It's kind of crazy, the high scores, and I feel like there's multiple. I don't know. It's crazy, but
I didn't know it was that involved.
And I could be wrong because I don't know cricket. I just know it's an interesting thing. I learned it in gym, in middle school. They were just and it is an interesting sport. So
I just played it as a kid. Next door neighbor, we played it.
It's really about having the full breadth and understanding of the depth of what goes on in the world of something so abnormal that addiction really is. And in recovery from that, you're coming out of that whole world. I mean, it's not like anything else that I deal with in mental health and substance abuse. It's very, very distinctly different with a lot of dynamics that come.
There's so many characteristics of it.
There really are. It's so invasive in a person's life.
And the thing is, the person has to understand what these characteristics are to intelligently be able to ask for help, because they are something totally unrelated. There's a programming software I learned years ago.
It sounds so Adam-esque.
Which one?
Oh, Neil just joined.
I'll really sound old if I tell you. So
I want to know.
You have to know now.
Oh, it's not really a program. So I use Access. I still use. I know it's
old,
but I can do stuff that y'all probably don't even know is even capable of doing.
Well, probably him. I probably know, but
I
have no idea.
I've been using it like forever. But anyway,
you can do some cool stuff with Access.
Stop belittling him.
So anyway,
go ahead, Adam.
So
I'm going to speak up for you because I have moral courage to shut Neil down from his belittlement.
So there was a type of software I used before that back in '98. It's almost identical, and so I could pick it up really easy. And I could understand how a lot of things are on it. But the thing was, there was a guy I worked with that knew a lot about it, but I would try to ask him questions, and I'm like, didn't know the terms, and didn't know you got to know what a field is.
Right,
like,
you can't even have the conversation.
Yeah, you're like, the thing that you do this and that.
Or Access calls it one thing, Fox Pro calls it something else, or SQL uses this. Yeah, I had a conversation this week just with emails talking about like contact user field. Like, I mean this, and they're like, well, no, they mean that. I'm like,
you got to understand what you're talking about.
You know what's funny is you're a car guy. I'm not. And you say stuff about the rims of the tires leading to the buckle belt of the axle system. And I'm like, I have no idea what you just said to me, man. I can make this stuff up pretty good, though.
He actually is pretty good about that.
He just grabs terms out of the air.
He does. He'll say it in front of his wife, and I'm like doing...
buckle belt. I think I just came up with buckle belt of the axle system. That's great.
Yeah, he'll say, "Yeah, how's your buckle belt going on your that you're putting on the transistor on the
how's your equilibrium balancer?
Yeah,
balancer."
He just come up with stuff like that.
I do. I'm a linguist, I guess. So the language of substance abuse. I think I'll take us out by really kind of emphasizing to you listening and dealing with substance abuse issues. Please definitely know and ask for honesty from your clinicians. There are a lot of people that do not know this language, and you need to have an understanding, even if you're working in therapy for depression and you grew up in a family of addiction. One person that has drug or alcohol addictions dramatically impacts your life. And if you are bold enough to ask, and I would encourage you to ask your therapist if they understand those things. If they don't, take no offense. You're not going to hurt their feelings, but if it's a primary issue, or you think it might, because if you think it might, it probably is, find somebody that does. And therapists out there listening, please, I really advocate for you to get that training, to get that understanding about substance abuse issues, because you will see it in your office and not know that it's there. And that is an unfortunate reality, because it's such a destructive and all life-encompassing reality that, that blind spot misses an opportunity to help the primary issue that is probably going on with them: substance abuse, family dynamics, and substance abuse in that person themselves. So get trained, get information. There's great training out there. Nice to have you back, Mr. Cloninger. I really enjoy you. Thank you for coming back. I'm glad you're medically better and more oil worked around the rims there.
That's a weird term. Don't say that.
Yeah, that came out really wrong. I really do usually do better with things like that. When I
make it something by car.
Yeah, it's car metaphoricizing into human body didn't work right there. So sorry about that. Closing thoughts, comments, things you're thinking about. Did we do a good job, Neil? Reviewing the show?
I think so. And I want to emphasize on the substance abuse stuff with the therapist. I think you've hit on the head when you talk about a lot of people are probably affected by substance abuse more than they think. Like you said, could be the family, could be a friend, could be themselves. Like, there's so many dynamics tied to it that almost everyone has at some point dealt with someone with substance abuse. So I think that's an interesting thing that you just have to understand, whether you're dealing with the person dealing with it or experiences they've had with it. Almost everyone has some sort of, like you said, I agree with you that a therapist should know it.
Alcohol, drugs, weed, pot, pills, gambling addictions, sex addictions, online video gaming addictions, and I missed one. What did I just miss? Eating, gambling, sex, and gaming. Yeah. So those 4 process addictions. But check out episode 222 because we took a deep dive on that. Closing thoughts, comments? All right, guys. Stay well. Thanks for listening. We will review the month of May with Adam Cloninger joining us back then. And we got some cool shows coming up for you in May, so stay tuned. We'll get back on track. Tuesday mornings, things come out. So thanks for hanging out with us. Stay well. We'll see you next week.